full year and that lets you save.
Who cares?
True Form Life.
Green lookum.
Welcome to Exploring Mind and Body with Drew Tadia. Drew is an expert in nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. And he wants to help you live a healthier, longer, and more active life. Now here's your host, Drew Tadia.
Welcome to another edition of nationally syndicated Exploring Mind and Body. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community. Whether you're listening on terrestrial radio across the country or as a podcast around the world, we certainly wouldn't be here without you. And I always appreciate your time to come in and see what we have going on. Now, today I'm bringing on Bryan Falchuk. He's been on the show before, and we don't usually or very often bring on the same guest, but Bryan brings so much value every single time. You're going to hear throughout this entire interview how engaging he is, how much he has to offer, and the value with everything that comes up in this interview. We're talking about relationships, and I think every single one of us could work on developing a better relationship, whether it's something that you're struggling with. We're talking about coworkers and the challenges. We're talking about being at work. Not only that, but at home and the relationships that we're growing in our personal lives as well. It's so important to pay attention to what's going on in and around our lives. We need that supportive community. We need people to rise us up instead of bring us down. And Bryan gives us ideas and insights on how we can look within and at ourselves instead of being the victim and always placing blame on other people in our lives. So sit back and enjoy. We got all that coming up. Fun!
This is Exploring Mind and Body. Naturally improve your lifestyle one show at a time with your host, Drew Tadia.
Welcome to another edition of nationally syndicated Exploring Mind and Body. This happens rare, I gotta tell you, Bryan, but we're bringing them back for the second time. Welcome back to Exploring Mind and Body.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Drew.
It's our pleasure. We always have great conversations. I had the honor of coming on your show as well, so I do appreciate that. Bryan, give our audience a chance to resonate with you for a moment. Let them know who they're listening to. Yeah,
so I got to think of like a succinct way to list all the random things that I do, but they all come together.
Right.
So I'm a father and a husband, and that's pretty relevant for what we're going to talk about. But I'm also, I've been an executive in the financial services industry and the tech space. I'm at a tech startup at the moment. I'm also a best-selling author and speaker, and someone who's just totally committed to helping other people change their lives. And I feel really strongly about that other people piece of it, that I can't change anybody's life. So I do a lot of coaching and speaking and my writing. It's all about giving people that inspiration, but it's not me. It's the things that hopefully spark the change within themselves. And that's how you own it and move it forward and keep it going. So that's really, that's my passion. That's what I'm most focused on in life.
So where did the idea of relationships come up?
It came up because I have relationships, and some of them don't go the way that I want them to, and my first book is called Do a Day. It's all about kind of your relationship with yourself, like finding your own inspiration in you to overcome your challenges, to get that motivation and to achieve. And I've been living that for a while now. And what I realize is, as much as I'm good with me, and I'm always growing and developing and challenging myself, I keep having these pockets outside where it's not going as well. And what I kept coming back to is this feeling that, like, I've made all this work. These other people just need to insert the phrase like treat me better, love me more, value me, see that I mean what, like whatever it is that I feel like it's a problem with their perception or their treatment of me. It's like all these why questions about them. And in the midst of some of the toughest relationship situations I had been in at home, at work, it really struck me as like, I can't change them. And that's really difficult. Like, I don't have any power, any agency, any control over them. And if I continue to feel that way about it, then it's really hopeless and crushing. And it's like, well, how would I not get divorced? How would I not quit my job? How would I not whatever? And just go on to some other relationship where, let's hope it's not the same, but it could be, because other people are the problem. And that's not really a way to go about anything. So I started to look for what is it in me that could affect a change in them. And it was through that process, starting to research things, I discovered a number of principles in Buddhism that just blew my mind and opened me up to a different path. And as I started to implement that, I started to use it with people I was coaching, and this stuff's working. And I'm like, there's something really bold and profound and impactful here. And it was obvious to me that my next book had to be written, and it had to be about relationships, because it's what, like, we all have them. We all have relationships that, no matter how good they are, could be better. And most of us have relationships that are not that good. And so, of course, they could be better.
True Form Life.
Before we get into the show, I just want to mention Complete Truth Protein. This is a plant-based protein supplement that we've designed ourselves at True Form. And the reason I designed it is because I felt like there was a need in the industry. Now, when I was traveling around the world, and I literally had a tackle box full of supplements and products and vitamins that did a whole lot more damage than good. So when I started doing more personal training and fitness classes, people would ask me what types of supplements I would recommend. And I always say, eat food. So that's why I've designed Complete Truth Protein around food. It's made with quinoa and hemp seeds. And one of the main benefits that it offers is improved digestion. So many of us deal with digestion issues on a regular basis. It also gives you a natural boost of energy. So if you head over to trueformlife.com/complete-truth-protein, we have tons of more details, videos, recipes, and everything you need to get going in the right direction with a good quality protein supplement. trueformlife.com/complete-truth-protein.
True Form Life.
I think it's so incredible to know that, like, we can continue to work on yourself, which is what you're saying here, and you can find out how people have different personalities or how they can make different connections and deeper relationships, which I think we're all kind of after. And I think that this book is so timely in many different ways, because I think that we're all kind of like, you meet people on social media, like we have all these, what do you call them, like superficial or social media friends. How do you turn those friends into relationships, or how do you have a meaningful relationship? Like, it's so fly by with everything that we do in life. And now when it comes to relationships, like you're talking about with relationship with your wife or your family, we have coworkers. What is it that resonates with you deeply that you want to help other people understand about relationships?
Yeah. When you bring up that, like, the social media relationships, there's like common guidance out there, like, add value for them. Right. Like, if you need something from them, just don't worry about what you need, just add value for them. And adding value is a great idea. It works beautifully in business. It's a really good way to think about your products. But when you're talking about human interactions, to me, it feels cheap. It feels demeaning. It feels transactional. And what we're not talking about is transacting with people. We're talking about having a relationship, actually relating to them. And that's not about just adding value and hoping that then, like, they do you favors. Instead, what I like to focus on, and there's 3 core principles that I talk about in the book. And the first one is honestly the most critical. And it's the idea of happiness seeking. And I did not come up with that. Buddha did, like 2,500 years ago. It's beautiful. It's not to think about, well, how can I add value for them? What free webinar or ebook can I give them that they might value? It's, what is it they actually want? What are they actually seeking in life, irrespective of me or anything else? What's their definition of happiness, and how can I help them achieve that? And that's something that, no matter what the context, that's always relevant. And it's also something a lot of us are confused about in ourselves. So we do things that we think will make us happier, but they don't necessarily make us happier, because we're probably not in touch with our true happiness, or there's something blocking us from it. Like maybe it's a trauma from the past. For myself, I shared in the first book the impact my parents' divorce had on me, and it led me to obsessively eating, because food became the thing I was using for that momentary happiness because of a sadness I had. And as soon as I was done eating, I was still sad. So I'd have to eat again. But in the moment, I was confused. I thought I wanted something that tasted good, or I thought I wanted to feel good, and that food would do the trick. And it did for a moment, but I was confused about how to solve for that bigger question that I was trying to solve for. And you see this time and time again, where people do things that maybe hurt someone else, or maybe hurt themselves because they're confused. They think it's going to help them. They think it'll make them feel better. And for a moment, it does. They get a dopamine hit or a sugar high or whatever it is, or a different kind of high. And they feel better in that moment. But man, do they hit a low later. So it's not making it better. And so they have to do it all over again and they hurt people more. So what can you do to help them discover the real underlying happiness they're trying to feel? For me, it was this hurt from my parents splitting up. It was feeling like I'm not safe. I'm not going to be taken care of.
So when you're developing a relationship and you make a connection, is one of the first things you think of, how can you make this person happier? How can you contribute in a positive way to that relationship?
I say that's more of the second thing. The first thing is trying to figure out what their happiness might be. And in some cases, you can talk to them about it. You can ask. In others, you can't. And so you can sort of, guesstimate it a bit. So for example, I use this example in the book and I talk about it a lot because I think it's an awesome example. Anyone who's been behind the wheel has definitely had this happen, but getting cut off in traffic. We get so angry at the other person. You're Canadian, so maybe you wouldn't do this, but certainly Americans would, where we would try to like cut them off back to teach them a lesson. Canadians, you're nice to people. You'd be like, oh, that's okay. Go ahead. But, most people I know, like, they're going to give them the middle finger. They're going to scream at them, even though they can't hear, swearing up a storm at the other person, or they're going to ride their bumper, like whatever it is. They're like, I'm going to get back at you. I'm going to teach you. You don't do that to me. Very few people are like, oh, that's cool, man. Whatever. But the reality is that person, like, we feel wronged by them. But first of all, you're one car further back. Does that really matter? Like, there's 20,000 cars in your way and everyone's like totally gridlocked. Does one car really make a difference right now? No, it doesn't. Not unless you make a difference, first of all. Second of all, that person did not get on the highway to cut you off. They got on to get where they're going, just like you. And if you think about it that way, instead of like, oh, they did this to me. No, they did this for themselves. They thought they'd be better off. They thought they'd be closer to the happiness they're seeking right now. Like, I'm just trying to get where I'm going. Guess what? So are they. We actually have the exact same goal, but our goals are kind of in competition, because for me to get there faster means I have to be in front of him. And so he's going to get there slower. And so that's taken away from his happiness. So if you can think about it in this happiness sense, first of all, you relate to the person because you're like, oh, actually, we just want the same thing. And you realize we can't both win. Now, how much worse off am I? I'm really not. And what if I try to cut him off now? I'm probably going to get in an accident, or maybe he's the kind of person that he's going to flip out and he's going to get violent, and maybe he'll purposely hit my car, or worse. Like, I actually drove by someone who the cars were kind of trading cutoffs, and one of them was this really big truck with this really big driver who had a really big bat in the car, and he slammed on the brakes and got out and literally like took a bat and started smashing the car that he was honestly, maybe it's a Boston area thing. I don't know, but like it has. So you're watching this and you're like, oh my God. Luckily there was a state trooper nearby. So, once there's a gun on the scene, like things get back under control, but you don't know what's going to happen. So like, what good is it doing to behave that way? So, for me, it's not that I'm totally like, I don't care that I get cut off, but it allows me to step back and not feel so intentionally wronged, which keeps me from getting so worked up. And then my relationship with that person, well, even though it's a fleeting one, like I'll probably never see them again. It doesn't impact my day like it might otherwise. It doesn't impact their day. I still get where I'm going. My blood pressure's cool. It's a different way of interacting, and then it leaves the door open for possibilities. Like, if that was an ongoing relationship, well, what if it's like, well, now we're not speaking to each other because what you did to me on the highway? No, like, we're both just trying to get where we're going. It's fine. You thought that would be better and it wasn't. Oh, well, now let's work together on this other thing. But we couldn't have that if I was feeling so wronged by you. And that understanding of happiness, me trying to put myself in your shoes and be like, what could this person want? Helps me process what I'm receiving from them so I can put something else different back out for them to take in.
True Form Life.
I couldn't be more excited to share with you our brand new magnesium supplement called TriMag. Now we've put together 3 different forms of magnesium. We also have potassium in there as well. This is a top quality magnesium supplement in liquid form. It's 95% absorbable, which is much different than 5% coming from a powder or pill. So look for a magnesium supplement with clean ingredients like a TriMag. If you want more details, head over to trueformlife.com/TriMag magnesium supplement. This will help you improve your sleep. It helps muscle recovery and soreness. It helps mood, digestion, and it will give you a natural boost of energy as well without the crash. So check out more details at trueformlife.com/TriMag magnesium supplement.
Trueform Life.
Yeah, and I think that if we take a moment to consider the other side, which is challenging, especially in heated events in our lives. Yeah. But if you just take a minute to look at the other side, like I try to think that myself, and you brought that up in Boston, but here in LA, the traffic.
Oh, LA, yeah, for sure.
It's insane, and people are not concerned about anyone else but themselves when they get behind a car. Bryan, what's the next step? Did you say there was 3 steps that you're working on?
Yeah, there's 3 steps, and I guess I might want to pause just for a second and give this the title of the book is this basic idea that I think sets the whole thing up. And when you talked about seeing the other person, this is what it's about. So the book's called the 50, 75, 100 Solution, Build Better Relationships. And these numbers are about pieces of the whole. So I see relationships divided into 4 quarters. The 50 is the first 2 quarters, is like my side versus your side. Like most people get that. If there's 2 of us in the relationship, or maybe it's 2 groups, it doesn't have to be 2 individuals, but like 2 of us, it's 50-50. I got mine, you got yours, and we're each responsible for our own half of it. Now, it doesn't mean that we always feel that way. Maybe we feel like they did this to me, but I control me, and that's where the line is drawn. And that's where I think a lot of us end up feeling upset, and like the description I was using before about feeling like I don't have power or control or influence or agency, it's over their half. And that's a tough thing, right? So this is where the 75 comes in. You actually do have a way to move into their half. And so if we see that whole relationship as quarters, what you find is each person's divided in 2. Half of us is our actions. So what we're like proactively, independently choosing to put out into the world. And the other half is our reactions. It's how we're responding to what we're taking in. And in the case of a relationship, it's what we're taking in from the other person. So it's how we're putting out there of our own free will, and half how we're reacting to what they're putting out there. And we definitely control our actions. Most people agree with that. Where it gets fuzzy is some people say, well, I can't control my reactions because they're doing this to me. They hit me, or they hit me verbally, or whatever else, they cut me off. I didn't choose for that. I don't have a choice but to react this way. Well, that's not true. You do have a choice. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's easy to exercise that choice, but you still have control over yourself. If they call you a name, you don't have to respond. You don't have to cut them off in return, and expand that to whatever the situation is. So we own our actions and our reactions. But here's the thing is if we're acting and reacting better, we're not agitating, we're not inciting violence, we're not making fun of them in response or whatever it is. If we're acting in a way that's actually more than just not doing bad things, but actually in support of what we believe their happiness to be, then what we end up doing is affecting the half of them that's a response to us, their reaction piece. So like we control ourselves and we can influence half of them through the reaction mechanism going on with them. And that's how you get to 75. So you got your half plus half of them, 3/4 of the whole. And when you can control or influence 3/4 of the whole to be better, you can get the whole thing, the 100, to move forward in a better way. And so that's kind of the idea and the title and the structure of the book. And the mechanism for that is these 3 Buddhist principles, the happiness seeking that we talked about. And then the next is interdependence. And this is actually the mechanism that happiness seeking, you can deploy it basically to make that shift. And that interdependence is the idea that none of us is a certain way in and of ourselves. We are these ways in relation to other people, other situations. So like I'm not all good or all bad. I'm those ways depending on who I'm interacting with, when I'm interacting them, what I'm doing, what they're doing, etc. It's why, like, I always say, like, bullies have friends. Like our spouses, we have, these unbelievable romances, and we scream at each other sometimes. Like you can have this, like, I love my sister to death. I've got 3 siblings, the next one up from me, and we love each other, but God, did we fight like crazy all the time as little kids. And like, we can get like a day in it. She lives across the country from me, but like when she's in town, it's great for like a day and a half. And then we kind of fall back into our patterns. And then we're back to like, I'm going to miss you so much. I'm sorry we fought, but like, it was amazing to spend time with you. So like, same person, right? Like same person, same relationship, but things in the situation change. And this is where independence becomes a mechanism. If you change the situation, even with the same people, you have a different version of each other. And so taking the happiness seeking, you can affect a change in the dynamic because you're interdependent on each other. And the last piece is impermanence. And what this is about hope. So impermanence is that age-old adage that the only constant is change, right? Nothing stays the same always and forever. We all change, even if it's just our hair. Like it gets grayer, or in my case, gray and beige because more of my head is showing. Sometimes because I've cut it off, sometimes because it seems to be cutting itself off. But like, we change, and that's perfectly normal. You marry someone and 10 years later, you're like, oh, it's not the person I married. Well, neither are you. We all change. And what that means is they don't have to be bad to you forever. Your relationship doesn't have to be difficult forever because everything changes. So that gives us hope that like it's worth studying and figuring out their happiness, trying to find a way to relate to that through interdependence to affect change in your relationship, because everything changes, including the way you're relating to each other. So we've got the basis, we've got the mechanism, and we've got the hope that it's worth the work.
I want to take a moment to tell you about Detoxify Yourself. Now, Detoxify Yourself is really a personal story that I put together in a book for my clients and family and those interested in how I teach to live a healthy lifestyle. I had no idea it would become a bestseller in a major city, Calgary, Alberta, where I grew up. I was on global news, and I want to share more about it with you right now. So Detoxify Yourself talks about the main food substances that I choose to avoid, which is no gluten, dairy, soy, or GMOs. So this is a 30-day meal plan that avoids all those substances. It also talks about the toxins not only we put in our body, but we put on our body as well, and the toxins we surround ourselves with, like a toxic environment. So if you want more details about Detoxify Yourself, if you want a kickstart on how to avoid these toxic substances, I have all the recipes laid out for you. I have all the information. It's very simple and easy to follow. So head over to trueformlife.com for more details. Do you think that there's some people out there that are, let's say, I understand what you're saying. So let me say that people that are incapable of being pleasant in a relationship. And then you might say, well, then it really depends on how you take that pleasantness or unpleasantness. But let me argue that if someone is continually, like, let's just say verbally abusive, for example, it's pretty difficult to have, like, to see the positive side in that relationship. How do you?
So I think where this comes together is the idea of what better means. So I'm very clear in the book, and I give examples of this where, like, better is not holding hands and like staring into each other's eyes. I had a coworker who's trying to get me fired. Like, we used to be friends, and then she started to pull this stuff. Turns out, like, she had screwed up and was covering it up, and a few of us were kind of stumbling into exposing that. We didn't know, and so she just went like full tilt, nasty, get everyone who's a threat to me fired kind of style. We were never friends again, but we could work together again, and she stopped trying to get me fired. And so for me, like, that's a lot better. Not getting fired, shockingly, is better. I mean, I guess it depends on like what your severance package might look like, but in that case, it was better. I liked my job a lot. But did I not like the way it was going every time I had to work with her. And when we got through the situation, I share it all in the book. we were able to work together pretty consistently after that. And I was never like, "Ooh, where is she? I hope I get to see her today." But it was like, "Oh, cool. We get to work on this thing and it's going to work out well." And I could just sort of leave it at that. There's other situations where, you know what? The answer might actually be that you need to split up. The answer might be that you need to leave. But here's the thing. How you leave and what you're left with may be the form of better. So absolutely, like I'm pretty clear about this. There are some situations where reading a 150-page book is not the answer, but it may help you see the answer. And the answer may be professional help. The answer may be walking away. I mean, if you're in a physically abusive situation with someone and there's like mental illness or addiction at play or whatever other drivers, or just years of trauma that they are not going to face, better may be that you recognize that, and with compassion, you walk away for your own sake. But you walk away in a different way than, with that lasting hurt. Like anyone who's come out of an abusive relationship or an abusive work situation or whatever it might be, it leaves you with baggage. And if you're not being actively hurt by that anymore, you needn't kind of subconsciously be hurt by it going forward. And that takes self-work. So if you can walk away with less of that burden, if you can walk away without having to have nightmares about it, I think that's a better version of that relationship. So, it's not to say that like you do the math and you learn the 3 Buddhist things and then you're good and everything is like, you go from getting punched in the face to like being passionate and love and sweet with each other. Like that's not always going to be the case. But maybe there's a different way that you can both exist in the world without putting either of you in jeopardy.
Bryan, can you give us a chance to learn more about where they can find your book or your website or anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, so you can find everything about me at bryanfalchuk.com. The book itself has a website that might be easier to spell because it's numbers. So if you go to 5075100.com, 5075100.com, you can find out more about the book. There's a link to purchase it. You pre-purchase it there. It comes out November 19th. And I'm really excited to share it. It's already hit number 1 bestseller in its categories, even though it's not even released when we're recording this. So I'm pretty psyched. So
wow.
Second bestseller. I'm psyched for that.
Congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, Bryan, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. We could sit here all day and talk and have a great conversation, but we do have to wrap things up. So once again, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing some of your expertise with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew.
True Form Life.
That's going to wrap things up for this edition of Exploring Mind and Body. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community. So many takeaways there from Bryan. He's a great speaker. He brings so much. I'm very fortunate. I feel so grateful that I have the opportunity to have Bryan in my life and to have him come on the show and share his expertise. And we do get a chance to talk about other things as well when we're not doing these recordings. So I appreciate Bryan in my life and the relationship we built together. I hope that gave you some ideas on how you can build the relationships around your life. And if you're going through a difficult situation, hopefully you can find a way to look within and find a way to get around it and maybe push aside that anger and look to that happiness and that interdependence and impermanence that Bryan's talking about. Something that I didn't talk about with Bryan is that I have the opportunity to study under a Buddhist monk myself, and he offers all kinds of different insights to help better center yourself and look within and really understand what you're in control of. So that story and that example really resonated with me, so I hope it did with you as well. All past shows can be found at exploringmindandbody.com. You can check out all past shows there. We also have a brand new podcast. Well, I shouldn't say brand new by now. We'll be on season 2 by the time this airs, but we have a newer podcast called Transformations Through Running, and amazing stories about runners and dealing with difficult challenges in your life. If that's interesting to you at all, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, all the major podcasting platforms. And then we're also at trueformlife.com. This is where we put together our main products, services, ideas on how we can help through at-home workouts to meal planning and helping you live a energized life. We work on helping you improve digestion. We work on giving you natural energy in a number of different ways. So if you need help with that at all, head over to trueformlife.com. Shoot us a message or look around to find out all the podcasts, videos, blog posts, recipes. It's all there. So you can visit trueformlife.com for more details. Once again, thank you so much for being here. That's it. That's all I got. I'm out of here. As always, I'm your host, Drew Tadia, in health and fitness for a better world. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Exploring Mind and Body with Trueform Life's Drew Tadia, fitness expert. To find out more about the show, Drew Tadia, or to listen to past shows, visit exploringmindandbody.com.